February 27th, 2023. You're listening to Oblast with Don and Kevin, and I am Kevin.
And that makes me Don.
And we're back once again.
Here we are.
Welcome to the show.
Hey, everybody.
Donnie is on a cell phone because we're trying to figure out like a best way to do the audio scenario here, because we had been recording, I'd say, like the first 80 episodes of the second season, which is when we started doing this new thing with Don and I. I just call it the second season, right? And we were using Google Meet, and but Donnie has a Chromebook, and I don't know, it's probably like 5 years old or something. And
no, that's half of it.
And they just stopped updating it, right? So one day it just stopped working with Google Meet. So like Chrome on his Chromebook doesn't work with Google Meet. So we tried Zoom, and that's what we were using on the last, like, say, seven episodes. But the problem with that is just that it's kind of expensive for something that we can get basically for free, like we're doing right now. And then we tried using this other one that comes with our podcasting software that hosts our podcasts, and that didn't work for Donnie either. So right now Donnie's on his phone, and we're using a Meet again. So he's going to have a little bit of that wishy-washy noise in the background or something, and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, maybe Donnie will get a laptop at some point. Who knows? We'll steal one.
What are you going to do?
You know, we're
going retro. We're going old school VGN with this.
Yeah. Well, that would be like dial-up, like the old, like you'd be on the regular, like the dial-up phone or something.
Halfway through the show, I'm gonna be talking, and then I'm just gonna hang up.
Make sure you say, "Oh my God," before that happens.
Yeah, right.
And then go. Did you hear about that Dilbert thing? That guy that does Dilbert, and I guess he went on like listen, I don't know anything. I don't read the paper, so I don't really read the Dilbert. I don't look at the Dilbert cartoon online. Honestly, right. I don't even follow, like, I don't know anything about comic strips. So, okay, go ahead.
Even when I read comic strips, I didn't read Dilbert.
Yeah, well, I mean, I used to read maybe back in like the late 90s, early 2000s or whatever it was. But, like, I couldn't tell you if any of those comic strips are still around. Like, is the Funky Winklebean still around? Like, I don't know. No idea if that's still around. Who's Bailey? Right. These those always like Family Circus and
Hagar the Horrible.
Like Marmaduke. Like Marmaduke was never funny. Like, why didn't they keep putting the Marmaduke in there? Like Giant Dog. Like, you know, I mean, maybe some people, the Giant Dog's got a big kick out of it. I don't know. But I mean, maybe that the Marmaduke guy is really old and he's still doing the Marmaduke. I don't know. I have no idea.
He's passed it along to the other Marmaduke drawers.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Do they do that? Maybe they do that. Maybe they're like, I'm too old now. Now you draw Marmaduke. I mean, maybe. I think Charles Schultz did a little bit of that with Peanuts. But maybe that was after he died. I don't know. Because I know they added some new like Peanut cartoons or something later on, and I don't think those were the same quality as the ones from like, God, I don't even know when they made those, the 60s or the 70s or something.
Oh, yeah, those old ones.
Right.
They just did a movie a couple of years ago.
Right. Yeah. Peanuts. So
it's probably owned by, the Peanuts is probably owned by somebody, or they license it out to them, you know.
Yeah, Peanuts wouldn't, like, it's not, like, it's a great idea in the sense of it's a neighborhood of kids. There are no real parents. I mean, they're there, but they have no real voices. They're womp, 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 womp. You know, and the animals are intelligent. But mostly it's all this focus on the kids. Just the problem is that it's, the environment that those kids inhabit that doesn't really exist much today. You know, right. Kids going outside and hanging out together in groups, in the neighborhood. I mean, never. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you never see it.
They are. It's a lot worse now.
Well, they're all on their phones, and they're all, I mean, I realize that when they get a little bit older, when they're like, you know, 13 something, then they're like maybe interested in skateboarding, or, you know, boys anyway. And, you know, so they're going to be out or riding bikes maybe if because I kind of got a bit of a boost from what the heck's that Netflix show with the kids from the 80s? Was it?
Stranger Things?
Yeah, Stranger Things, yeah. And so maybe, who knows? I don't know. But anyway, the Dilbert guy.
Yeah.
So I guess he has a podcast, and I didn't listen to it, and I have no idea what he was referencing, other than the fact that I guess he said something like black people are like a group that white people need to stay away from because they're bad or something. And the thing is that this is the way it's like written in the news articles. I've read like 3 different news articles about it while I was taking a poop. And I know, we all out there know that he wasn't suddenly, very likely, because I haven't listened to it, he didn't suddenly start talking about white supremacy on his podcast, right? I mean, come on. Like, we know he probably wasn't doing it, but he probably was talking about something like maybe like the Black Lives Matter group or something, you know, and he was saying like, he referenced it wrong, and I'm not excusing it. Don't get me wrong. But what he said was, you know, and that's the problem when I read any of these media things, like any of these news things, regardless of what anybody says, unless I go to the source and watch it myself or listen to it myself, I can't trust what anybody is saying because they're not telling me the context of what was being said. And I'm not saying that makes it better or worse. It's just that, you know,
it's important.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I need to know a little bit more about the angle before like everybody just gangs up on the guy and necessarily destroys his life. And I think that's true of anybody when they say anything anymore, unless it's you know, you hear it from their own lips. It's hard to know what to believe when people are quoting people because they just quote like, you know, a sentence or 5 words or something. And you're like, well, was there more to it? Did he have a point he was making? Because what was his point? Was he just saying that again and again? I didn't listen to it, so maybe he was being totally racist. But what I'm saying is maybe he was just saying, you know, white people, you know, were in a situation and then, you know, and they had to get out of it. I don't know. I just don't know. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I can't trust, I don't think anybody can, the media, to be giving you the whole information. So, but then at the same time, I'm not going to go subscribe to the guy's podcast. That's too much work. Like, I don't know what it's called. I mean, it's probably called Dilbert or something, right? I don't know. Talk Time with Dilbert or something. And then I'd have to subscribe to it. And then I'd have to try to find the episode, probably one of the more recent ones. I'm sure if I listened to the most recent one, there'd be like I'm sorry, everybody, for what I said. Or something. Like, you probably have to listen to the one before that if it wasn't edited or changed. You know what I mean? Like, it's probably down anyway. It's probably like, we don't support that here on our podcast servers, so we've canceled the Dilbert show on the thing. It's like, oh my God, man. You know, like people they're just looking for a target. Everybody's just looking for a target to just attack, you know? It's just like a mob.
And a lot.
Go ahead.
And I was gonna say, people are always looking for, like you said, people are always looking for something to attack. And the thing is nobody does the research. Nobody's researching anything. They'll read a headline.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying.
Creator,
exactly. Yeah.
They're just like, Dilbert creator is a racist.
Right.
And they can just go, you know what? I don't need to read the article. He's racist.
Yep.
And it's just like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, how do you know? And then like what you were saying with the context of what they were saying. I mean, the guy could have been like, hey, listen, Black Lives Matter is a group that white people don't want to mess with. You know what I mean? Or something like that.
Right.
And then somebody goes, he says black people are a group that white people should be.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Like, no, that's not what he's saying. Like, granted, I can understand even the way I said it. Some people might be like, hey, that's a little touchy because people are touchy nowadays. But it's not as bad as what they're saying. You know what I mean? As what they're making it out to be.
Right.
And that's what they do that a whole lot.
Yeah, well, exactly. And this way, again, people, we didn't listen to it. We don't know. So don't think, don't point out to us that you're dead wrong.
I know nothing about it.
It's like, I don't know. But, I was talking to one of our listeners, longtime listener, who identifies as a black person. He's white, but he identifies as black. No, he's not. He's black. And
he's Asian.
Yeah. And he was talking to me about my one comment about the fact that, like, you know, when we were talking about race before, where you know, saying somebody's red skinned or yellow skinned is a slur, but saying somebody's black is okay, right? And it's become like an acceptable thing. And you know, the funny thing is about that is that, like, and I think we should get away from colors, right? I think that pointing out, you know, these groups as colors, black people, white people, creates this division, right? We should all be one people. And I know that that's like a flowery peace and love run through a field. Yes, right. I know that that's not, but I think you have to start somewhere. Like Morgan Freeman, you know, says, you know, if you want to, you know, get rid of the race problem, you stop talking about it. Like, you stop talking about race. You obviously, what he means by that is you obviously point out injustices and fix those injustices. But the rest of the time, you're one people. You stop looking for that separation and saying, like, you're this and you're that, you know? I mean, take the N-word, all right? The N-word is based on Negro, right? And that goes back to the Latin, which is like, it's a long time since I've looked at this.
Tread lightly, Bear.
No. It's very similar. It's like negra, something like that. But anyway, what that means is black. It's the color black. And it was simply, you know, sort of a fancy way, I suppose, of identifying persons of African descent at that point as black people. And the N-word just was an evolution, I would guess, or a de-evolution, I suppose, of the, you know, and the slang of taking of that word. But in the end, but the ultimate end of it is that they're just saying, you're identifying, you know, in their head, if you go back to like the slavery days, right? They're identifying them as black people, and they were using it as a slur. This is a different language, you know, and they weren't saying it right, but in their heads, you know, they were identifying them as this group being black. And, you know, and that's a, you know, a denigrating word that obviously has a lot of, you know, pain and everything. We don't even talk about it, you know what I mean? Like, you don't even say the word because it can cause all kinds of problems, except in rap videos and shit, but whatever. And but my point being is that, you know, there's like that causality of identification is like this weird thing where, you know, it's become acceptable. And I really think that people should push back on that. You know, like you look at the emojis, right? You know, on the thing, and now you can choose the color of the emoji physical feature ones, right? The hands or the faces, right? And they give you, and they don't just give you white and black, right? There's basically yellow and black, like we're yellow. They give you like 5 different colors, right? Like they
shades.
Yeah, or shades, darkening the yellow. And so they're creating even a division there because they're basically saying, like, you know, you're either really black or you're just kind of brown, or maybe you're like a lighter brown, or maybe you're kind of white, but you're not quite white, or you're really white, like Don and I. And you're one of those. And that's maybe how you should identify yourself. Maybe you're not really black. Maybe you're kind of like, just like a, you know, a light tan or something. Like again, you're creating this like division among, like, you know, all of these with this kind of stuff. Like does anybody care about the yellow? I mean, white people don't identify as the yellow. When did yellow become like the white people color? Like, it's you know what I mean? Like The Simpsons. I mean, obviously, like The Simpsons are probably modeled after a white family, right? I mean, I don't think anybody would really argue that too much, but I mean, it's also like almost ethnically Could be anybody though, really. I mean, it's just that they don't have the cultural references, I suppose, of a different culture at all in what they're doing. But I mean, you could take The Simpsons and you could darken it to a darker shade, and I don't think it would make much difference. You know what I mean? But it just creates division. It just creates like this separation among people, and I really think that in society, if we're ever going to get over it, you have to just like stop looking at people as different. And if you identify these differences, it's like we went to school, everything, etc. And we had some ethnicities in our school, and not a lot though. I mean, to be honest, like our high school was, geez, man, it must have been like 95% white at least.
Well, we had a strong contingent of Middle Eastern type people.
We did have some Middle Eastern people, right? And we had, but we had a select individuals here and there.
Otherwise.
There's an Indian, there's a couple black people over here. There's, but I mean, for the most part, though, like if you were ever like in a room or whatever with any groups of races, you generally wouldn't notice, I suppose, except when black people were there, because it's like, and this isn't a fault of anything except that the media and the things that you grow up in identifies them as being different. Like it's all the time, like constantly pointed out to you, so that you create this kind of like functional thing in your head where you see them as different. You're seeing them like, well, they're different because they're black and they're into their own thing and they only like to hang out with the people that they like and all this kind of stuff, which isn't true, but it becomes like this, you've been to places, parties, whatever, etc., with people where people that are white that don't know how to, or don't, let me say it this way, don't hang out with a lot of black people, right? So that when a black person that's friendly, that's our friend or something, is hanging out or something, they might say, that other person might not say things that are racist, but may say things that are awkward because they're not used, and you can tell that they're identifying right off the bat that, oh, there's a black guy here now, so now I got to act a certain way or say something a certain way. And I think everybody listening knows what I'm talking about. And that's kind of what I mean, because if it would have been one of those Middle Eastern guys coming in, you know what I mean? It doesn't register in the same way in your head. Now, maybe after like, right after 9/11 or something, because it was all over the news or something. But I'm saying, like, in general, like that separation causes this conflict, and the media really likes to stir that up and really likes to stir the pot. And unfortunately, like, leaders also like to create those divisions, because political leaders like to take these groups and try and use them against each other. So if they can identify a group and then kind of solicit that group for votes or et cetera, through policy and all this sort of stuff, that they become like some sort of a cultural thing. But really, it's interesting because it really seems to center around black people, right? And a lot less when it comes to Hispanics, and a lot of other minorities in this country. And and really the white people are diminishing in overall numbers in the United States year on year. And the minorities are growing. No one particular minority group is going to dominate, it looks like. I mean, it looks like the Hispanics, will probably become, based on everything we're seeing so far, will probably become the dominant race in the United States at some point, simply because of our geographical location and everybody coming over the border, et cetera, for immigration reasons, tends to to grow our population this way. But it's also possible just because of like the way immigration works and everything that we could be dominated by Indians, not American Indians, but Indian people, because there's just so many of them. They're going to be their country is going to be the most populous instead of China very soon, because China's population is actually shrinking, and India's population continues to grow. And, and they will, if they continue to immigrate over to the United States, they may become the more dominant one. But you and I will be dead before that happens. I mean, white people are going to stay dominant for a while longer yet, but they continue to shrink, and then their numbers continue to go down. But I think if the United States is going to work as the country that it is and that it has been, it really has to find a way to stop creating this separation among all cultures and find a way for us to become one people. And I know that's hard, but it's like, so I'm saying, like, when the Dilbert guy is sitting there saying, and again, I didn't hear what he said, but based on the references, when he's sitting there saying, black people is this group that white people need to stay away from, paraphrasing, that's the opposite of what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that, I don't think or white people need to approach black people and be like, show me what you got. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that's what you want to do. But I think that, like, when you have differences in culture, you need to be acceptant of people, wanting to learn about your culture and being part of it, not attack them for, like, appropriation, not like wanting them to not be a part of your culture. And I understand that there are resentment with a lot of people over certain things, historical things, of course. But I mean, what are you going to do? If you go back far enough, everybody's guilty of something, race wise. Right. But I think that there are obviously still ongoing racial issues, especially when you look at the cops versus minority groups in general. That's an ongoing thing. But I think that, if you want to get to a point where everybody's accepted for who they are, then you have to basically get to a point where everybody accepts everybody for who they are. And the only way they're going to do that is if you don't create the division, but you actually create it so people are welcome and they are able to learn about your culture and everything. Like, people could come to your place, Donnie, and you could fasten them a kilt and play the bagpipes for them and tell them all about Scotland. No,
You're funny.
Yeah, I'll fight you. But no, I mean, really, it's a thing. There was a really good story that was written. It was called The Wave, and they did some thought experiments with this too. But they basically, with the kids, like with the kids in the thought experiment, you can find it online, I think. But like, a teacher was teaching kids, and she was pointing out that kids with brown eyes were smarter than kids with blue eyes or green eyes. And she said, and she was just saying that that's just how it is. That's the fact, etc. And, and so the teacher then would do things, during the day, or I think it was just like a one day thing or whatever, where, like, she would teach the brown eyes in like a corner, doing fun things. And then she would teach, like, the blue eyed kids and something a little bit different over on the side. And then at recess time, some of the kids were teasing the other kids, being like, you're a brown eye or you're a blue eye and stuff like that. And the brown eyes would stay together and the blue eyes would be on the other side. And that was all, that happened organically because of that separation. They never felt they were included anymore because that division was created for them. And then, of course, after recess, the teacher said, I made a mistake, and switched it up and said, actually, the blue eyes are the smart people and the brown eyes aren't, kind of thing, which, at that point, I think the kids were probably catching on. But there's a very good story, too, called The Wave. I think there was a movie about it, too. Not the big wave that comes in and kills everybody. It's like a movement thing that happens in a school. I don't know if it's a high school or university, and it's similar about how like you get this, you can create this division between in and out. But anyway, I'm going to keep going on about it. I've gone on about this enough in previous discussions, but I just thought since the Dilbert guy brought this thing up, it's one more example of the fact that, you know, people are identifying groups by color, identifying groups by ultimately, you know, the media descriptors of a culture or an ethnicity, and then ultimately, you know, saying things about them that he probably has no real world experience in. The guy writes comics all day, you know, he's probably not out doing anything with anybody. He doesn't know anything. I mean, I don't know. Again, I ain't listening to his podcast, but certainly not now. But you know, it just, he probably picks it all up from the media and shot his mouth off, and now he's got to pay the price, you know, taking the Dilbert comic out of all the newspapers and everything.
Or it's just another classic example of nowadays. I don't know why I say classic nowadays, but it's an example of how nowadays everybody feels their opinions. It means something, and it's so important because you have free speech. You have to be able to say it.
Yeah.
So that, and I'm only putting that out there in case he like is guilty of doing something.
No, right,
I don't know what he did. I don't know what he said, but that's the thing is like, why? It's like, if you think about it, if you're say like a racist, okay, and you hate African Americans,
sure, okay,
it's like, what other than proclaiming your hatred for whatever reason, what do you get out of doing that? You know what I mean? It's like by going out there and being like, oh, well, everybody should be separated. It's not going to happen. Well, I know it's not going to happen. You know, there's no, you know, what are you going to do? Divide the country in half and be like, okay, so African Americans can live over here, and the white people can live over here, and then the Asians can live over here, and you know what I mean? It's like you can't.
Well, it sounds like a lot of the. I get what you're saying, but it sounds like a lot of the white supremacists believe that there's going to be a race war. That's been going on since the 60s. I mean, Manson tried to spark it off, I suppose, with his whole Helter Skelter thing. That's been going on forever. And that's ridiculous, first of all, because, I mean, black people only amount to like 16% or 17% of the population. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're down in numbers already to begin with. Like, what are you going to do? Like, it's just silly.
People are looking the wrong way. You got to be looking at the Latinos.
and the second thing is like, that's in nobody's interest. You know what I mean? But white supremacists seem to think that black people are going to get organized and then go on a killing spree of white people to eliminate them from the country. And I mean, it's just like, it goes against that idea goes against everything that I think black people are trying to fight for, right? Which is that, well, not every black person or anything, but I guess the black movement or whatever you want to call it, because it's all different. I don't want to identify it with just one, like a whole group like that. But anyway, it goes against everything that everybody's been trying to do all this time, which is, you know, create a sense of equality. And and if you're going to a point where it's like, you know, you want to eliminate any other group, right? That's not equality. That's just, well, murder. But it's just, you know, you're basically saying like you can't find that equality. So you're just going to eradicate another race. And I just don't think that'll happen. I don't think, you know, I mean, it's just like white people. It's like, we're not organized. You know what I mean? We don't go to the white people meeting. There's no fucking, you know, phone call coming from the president being like, all right, you're white people. This is the day we're going to do this. Like, everybody is a separate thing, you know? So it's like, there's no movement because there's no organization.
We get it every day.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's ridiculous. It'll never ever happen. But these guys become obsessed with this fantasy that it will happen because, and I think a lot of it with white supremacist people too is the fact that like they get to a point where it's just like with politics where that guy that hates the president because whoever the president is, it doesn't matter which president, any president, but there's always that guy that hates the president because all their problems are caused by the president, and you and I have talked about this before. It's like the president has like really very little impact on our day-to-day lives, year after year after year. Yeah, there's some nudges here and there, right? Prices and masks or something. I don't know. I guess not. I mean, I don't know. This is Trump introduced the masks, his administration, whatever. But the thing is that like these things are all really minor versus like your local mayor is going to put a freaking cell tower in front of your house, like that's way more impactful but these people become obsessed and think that the president is responsible for every bad thing that has either happened or going to happen, etc. And I think the white supremacists do the same thing, but they target ethnic culture, black people or whatever whatever their target is, and blame everything on them. The Jews. Remember when they would be? I mean, look at the Nazi Germany, right? They were always like, the Jews caused this and that, and they did all these things, etc. Yeah. And it's demonizing. And then there's people that just follow along with that and say like, all these problems that we're having with our marriage, it's Jews,
Right.
And the wife's like, I don't think that's it. I think it's your drinking and womanizing. It's like, it's the Jews that caused it. Yeah, they sold us the liquor that caused me to. I normally wouldn't have if I had bought regular Steins of beer from a German. I don't know.
I love my wife, but I wouldn't have cheated on her if those Chinese people didn't move.
Right. But I mean, that's how people's mentality works, man, and it's screwed up. But anyway, I didn't take up
anything
half the
to get
show
an
on
easy
that,
excuse out of something. And then real quick, I remember when you brought this. I didn't know you were talking about this because you didn't tell me what we were talking about today. Because we didn't even really know if I was going to get on or not.
Right.
But when you started talking about it, it reminded me of a time like in 5th grade. I want to say like I was in elementary school or something like that. And my teacher was like, they were doing like a geography or whatever, and she was like, how many races of people around the planet? And you can see all the kids in the class are all like, you hear one kid go like 4, and 7, 10. And I raised my hand. I go 1. And everybody stopped and looked at me, and she's like, 1. And I go, yeah. She goes, what race is that? And I go, the human race. And she just went like, oh, look at this little 5th grader. Just like showed me, like, I'm like, you're trying to separate everybody. I'm like looking at her like, you're separating everybody. Kind of like what you're saying is like, people want to separate it into all the colors and the groups and the nationalities and where they're from and stuff. But it's like, people have to realize just because it's like this race, that race, this race, this race. No. Like I said 2 weeks ago or a week or whatever it was, the only thing that's going to bring this planet together is an alien invasion. So we have to do like a Spider-Man far from home thing with Mysterio, where he like creates the illusion of an aliens invading, and everybody would just be like, it's cool, man. We're all together. But it's just, I just thought I'd my teacher's mind in 5th grade by saying there was only one race, the human race.
Right. And again, that's exactly what we should be striving to do. People should be trying to think, to not look at people as a color. And, it's funny because Noble, Cain, I call him Noble because that was his forum name, his black guy. And when we would sometimes talk briefly about something, usually at the bar table, somebody would mention something. I don't think it was usually me. Talking about, him being black. And he would always be like, he's like, yeah, but I'm mostly Irish, right? Which he probably is, you know what I mean? But he's, his skin color is black. And I mean, nobody that's racist is going to look at that guy and think that he's Irish. You know what I mean? But right. I think that's the reality of the situation is that if we could get past that color thing and just treat people like who they are for, who they are, he's you might look at him one day in the future and not see color and just see the fact that the guy he's Irish. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just how we have to get there as a culture. And I actually think other countries are getting, not every country, but I think a lot of countries are getting better at that kind of integration than the United States is. There's certainly countries that are a lot worse than us because they just don't have the kind of immigration and diversity that the United States has. But I think that there are some countries, especially in Europe, where a lot of times this isn't much of a thing at this point. They got other things to worry about. The racism thing doesn't really come into play. Some places it does. Still a lot of it, still a lot of racism in some countries, but I think in other places, like, they're working it out a lot better than we are. We seem to unfortunately be very much impacted by the politicalness of everything in this country, and unfortunately, as long as you can create separations between groups, they can be used as political pawns and make it so that nothing gets done in this country, which is often, I think, what the goal is most of the time for politicians in general. But anyway, let's move on. I wanted to talk a little bit about AI, and we missed it once before, and I just wanted to talk briefly about it because, artificial intelligence has been in the news a little bit lately. There's this thing called CGNAT, which is this search engine that's also built into Bing now, although you have to apply for it, and then Bing will give you access to it at some point. But it's artificial intelligence that you can ask it real-world questions, and it will give you real-world answers. So kind of like it's being built into Bing as being like a search engine thing, but it can also do things for you. You can, have it write you a story. You can actually have it string together programming code, but to some high degree of limitation on that. You can have it write music and do a bunch of different things. And it's where we're kind of going with artificial intelligence, and it's really interesting, and it's going to continue to be built out. We keep seeing this growth of artificial intelligence, although I will say that a lot of this artificial intelligence is based on sophisticated pattern matching. So rather than it really sort of thinking like we would think of, like, a sentient being thinking, it's doing some different kind of, memory fetching and piecing things together through, patterns. And it's more sophisticated than I'm simplifying it. But, I don't want people get a little bit worried sometimes when you talk about artificial intelligence because they think that it's going to lead to things taking over, et cetera. And really, there's like a paradigm shift between one and the other that has to take place because this pattern matching thing is very powerful and it's very, very cool, but it's also very much prone to error because, like, the looser you make the restrictions on it, it might be more creative, but it'll make a lot more mistakes. And the tighter you make it, it will make less mistakes, but be a lot less creative. And that's kind of this balance that makes it so, the engineers and everything continue to work on it. And they might eventually crack it where it's going to be able to actually think about things in a way that it will learn not just based on patterns, but as human beings, we have emotion tied into things, and you kind of learn a little bit about what's right and wrong based on feeling. And it may eventually get to something like that. I'm not saying it's going to be able to get it perfectly in there, but it's at some point. But anyway, that's not what I want to get into. What I want to get into about it, though, is like, military machines and using artificial intelligence as weapon systems in combat. And a long time ago, Eric Wolpaw and I we were at E3, and we went and saw one of these game developers who were working on a new game. It was kind of like a top-down shooter game, and they were explaining to us, they were showing us the game and explaining to us that they had to get rid of the AI, the artificial intelligence they had written for the game, and use some predefined patterns about where they wanted the characters to kind of move to and shoot and all this kind of stuff. Just like a regular video game, basically. It's all predefined. Eric asked them and said, "Well, why did you get rid of the artificial intelligence aspect of this?" And they basically said, "Well, I mean, the problem is that the artificial intelligence was too good, and it would like come up with these very complex like ways of shooting at you that you wouldn't even be able to see on the other side of the game board. It would come up with these unusual angles and be able to like figure out, 1 pixel, a way to be able to shoot at you that you just wouldn't be able to like logically compute as a person." And so they had to like get rid of it. And Elon Musk also said, about Boston Dynamics and their dancing robots and everything. He's like, those machines are going to be like they're going to be like running at like 100 miles an hour and like kill you in like seconds, basically, because the artificial intelligence will get that good and the machines will be that fast, right? So like when you watch movies like Terminator or whatever, and you see them like fighting back against the robots and stuff, and the robots are missing the humans, right? It's really not what's going to end up happening. I mean, the machines are going to get to a point where they're able to calculate where you are and be able to hit you, based on those predictions. And your odds of your success are going to be very, very low in order to even like try to stay alive. And so like, a machine will just like, run up on you and like kill you in 2 seconds. Like the kid in Terminator 2 would have been killed by the liquid robot man in like 5 seconds, whether Arnold Schwarzenegger was there or not, because it's just, he could have just like tossed a bullet sized body part, ricocheted off something and shot the kid right in the head or something. Like but we don't like to think of things being smarter than us. So it wouldn't make for a good movie, of course, and it wouldn't be all that exciting. It'd be like movies over 5 minutes in, John Connor is dead. Kid. The robots win.
That kid right there. I need to save that kid right. Oh, never mind.
Right. It would be done. But yeah, so the it's going to be interesting because we have all these drones and everything, and combat around the world. Like Alexa recently sent me, our friend in Serbia recently sent me an article about one of these companies in the United States, I forget their name, had recently taken F-15 fighters and put artificial intelligence in them and made them so that they could fly those things by them, purely by artificial intelligence, and did a test run with them, etc. Which is interesting, but also very much pointless since we have a bunch of drones that are essentially doing the same thing now, right? We have no need to actually use an old weapons platform like fighter craft like that, because it has no use. And when we went in on Iraq, we had aircraft carriers out in the sea, and for the most part, the fighters weren't called to do very much in that conflict because there were no dogfights to go on. They're not really bombers. They can fly in and drop a bomb here and there, but they're not really bombers, right? We've got high altitude bombers. We've got the stealth bomber. We've got bombers. Fighter craft is designed to fight other jet aircraft, and it's just we've kind of turned things to the point now where most jet aircraft isn't really worthwhile. Russia lost half their air force already in the war in the Ukraine against a country that is, not
small.
Yeah, small in the sense of resources. It was getting stuff from NATO, but the fact is that just air power has a real hard time against missiles, basically off the ground. I mean, it's been like that since the Russians knocked our V-2 out of the air with a missile during the Cold War, and a lot of fighter craft doesn't make a lot of sense anymore because it's like drones are it, and drones only manage to be practical, I think, because they're smaller most of the time. There's some big ones too, but the small ones don't really get picked up by radar very well because, I mean, they kind of look like a bird or something. You know, they got to be pretty close. That's why Russia had some relative success there for a while with these really cheap, almost like lawnmower engine planes that they were attacking the Ukraine with that they got from Iran, supposedly, because like they're small enough, and you know they're very hard to target with these systems because these systems are looking for, you know, a bigger radar reflection of something that's, you know, of a larger size, and then something that's smaller, like a flying bomb, not as much. But they do work eventually. I mean, if you get close enough, they, you know, and they get lock on. But and if they continue to improve these systems, I mean, I wouldn't want to be a bird flying around the Ukraine. Right? You might get misidentified and. I think though with the artificial intelligence thing, these drones that are flying in the sky are going to be able to like target things much better and be able to like eliminate targets to a point where I don't know, man. I don't know. War is going to be interesting in the future because it might just be machines fighting machines, you know. But I think that I don't know who else can afford to fight the war of the future. Like it's like the United States. I don't know if China will ever get there. I have a feeling like China might erupt into like a civil war at some point, simply because like it's mismanaged so badly that the people. I don't know if the people will necessarily revolt, but something's going to happen at some point because the corruption there is too large. But Russia's not going to do it. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I don't know who's going to fight the war of the future. I mean, no country on earth can really fight against us. I mean, we've shown that Russia's a paper tiger. Yeah, they got nukes, right? They can destroy us with their nukes, maybe, if they work. And we can turn their country into a parking lot, right? Same with North Korea. They can nuke a few of our cities, maybe, and we can just level their entire country to the ground. There's really nobody else. I mean, China doesn't really have much of a blue water navy. Their entire nuclear arsenal is not that large, and mainly it's in their doctrine that they would never use them as a first strike weapon, unlike, say, Russia always threatening with theirs. And there's nothing vested in them to attack the United States. They wouldn't gain anything from it. You know, I think that our weapons platforms and our systems are so freaking advanced, thanks to capitalism, that we will decimate anybody that goes against us. So I just don't know. I don't know what it's all for. You know, I don't know what we have a lot of it for. Like, you know, I talk about at times we have. I think we have 12 aircraft carrier battle groups now. I'd have to look it up because sometimes they take some out to refit them, etc. But I know we added a battle group for South America. So there's an aircraft carrier that's designed to patrol the waters in South America, basically. Why? like what force in South America is a threat to the interests of the United States? I mean, I guess we have some minor concerns about Venezuela at times and potentially, you know, them being friendly with China or Russia and bringing over arms into that country. And so we maybe want to have a posture of, so to speak, but it doesn't make a lot of sense.
I don't think it's much about Venezuela or whoever's down that way. I think it's more probably just global positioning. It'd be, you know what I mean? Like just placing aircraft carriers around the world. That way you have easy access to any point.
Well, of course. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, that's generally the idea, is that you want to be able to deliver your weapons platform within a relatively short period of time. But I just don't see. I don't know. It just.
Unless you're saying there's only one aircraft carrier and it's by Venezuela. You know,
Yeah, well, no, I believe those things always go out in a battle group of some sort because an aircraft carrier on its own is somewhat vulnerable. Um, so you have to have missile ships and submarines of some sort to interdict other vessels and keep. And there's also a lot of spy. There's also like a lot of spy craft. There's signals intelligence and things that try to get close to these ships. And so you actually need. I mean, a lot of times what submarines actually do is they move those other ships away. When they get too close because. If you're in a ship and a big ass submarine comes rising out of the water next to you,
right.
you're kind of getting out. You're kind of going somewhere else. I mean, there's kind of a lot of that. But we also have different types of. They don't really call them destroyers anymore. They got these other names for them, but they're similar. That
keeping apparatuses.
Yeah, keep other ships and things away. I just think though that like boats. I don't know. I think planes and missiles make boats pretty much obsolete. We do have them for some things, like landing people so they can invade, and spy missions and things like that, and also having intelligence aircraft spy on other countries. You got to have a place to take off and land, so you do that on the aircraft carrier, etc. But I think that. I don't know. I just think that a lot of it is probably just a lot of money being burned on things. Like we invented these littoral, they're called littoral aircraft or littoral ships. And the idea was that they could operate in shallower waters. So they got permission to build a bunch of these things, billions of dollars to make these littoral combat ships. They kind of look like futuristic destroyers, actually, but I guess they have a low, berth or something, so they're not so shallow or something, whatever the heck it is. And then we just ended up canceling the program. We were just kind of like, we don't really have a purpose in this, But it's like billions of dollars just made because I think the military-industrial complex is a problem in the United States because. What a long time ago, what all of these weapons manufacturers did is they spread all their manufacturing out all over the country, so that if you're building like a tank, you don't build it all in like say Mississippi somewhere. You're putting the tank treads are built here, the wheels are built there, the gun barrels built over here, this part's there, the smoke grenades there, all these different parts are all built. Thousands of parts are built all over the country. So. Then what happens is that when you go into Congress and you say, hey, we'd like to sell some more tanks or something, right? All of the representatives that have, employees in all of these different places all around the country become the majority of voters. And they're like, yeah, we want to keep our people employed. We want to keep our people happy. So we're going to vote for it. And we're going to pass this in order to make this, beneficial to us. But ultimately, we end up building a whole bunch of extra equipment that we don't necessarily need. I mean, I think part of this, war in the Ukraine and providing them the weapons and the gear is like a gift that we're giving to the arms manufacturers because, we might be giving them old equipment. We might be like, here's some old Abrams tanks. Here's some old missile systems. Here's some old Humvees we don't use anymore, which is all surplus. But that then frees up that stuff to put in new stuff in the United States, right? So on one hand, the arms manufacturers get to sell new ammunition to the Ukrainians for their war, and as well as beef up Europe and the weapons that you need to buy in order to either build up their borders because they're paranoid, or the ones that they've given away to the Ukrainians, replace those as well if they don't have their own homemade weapons, and then at the same time build up the United States arsenal further. So it's good in some ways because in the sense of it's American jobs. A lot of these weapon systems are made in the United States. A lot of people get to work. A lot of people get some benefits out of that, etc. The high-paying jobs usually, and all of that's good. It's just, I wish that we lived in a world. Here's me again running through the fields of a perfect world beliefs, but I wish that we did more humanitarian things with this money. Like I'm all for like employing people and around the country and building things, etc. But it would be better, if we were building things to help with disasters, like that train derailment that just happened, etc. Instead of having a bunch of people just going over there with bottles of water and being, like, oh, it sounds like a problem. I mean, it would be better if we had, more containment and things that could help with all kinds of disasters like this, and had the technology and the resources and the funding and things to go in and help not just our country, but other countries around the world if they want it, to assist. And I think that would be a better way to spend money than to build ships like the littoral ships and then just ultimately cancel them because you don't actually have a freaking use for them. There's a good documentary. It's kind of a comedy on HBO about when they built the Bradley, that half troop carrier, half tank thing that they used a lot of in Iraq, and I think Dave Bates was actually a commander of one when he was in the service, and it's a friend of ours, and they're giving them as well to the Ukrainians now, but it's a movie it's a movie that's just about the fact that there's so many people with their fingers in the batter or whatever that they make it so the thing just gets built to ridiculous specs, because like the Bradley was supposed to just be a troop carrier. Some guy drives, there's a bunch of troops in the back, and then they ultimately had people come in and they were just like, well, what if we put like a gun on it? Like, what if we put a cannon on the front of it? It's like, well, it's not a tank, it's a troop carrier. Yeah, but what if we put a cannon on it? And then it's like, well, we could put a cannon on it, but it's going to carry less troops. It's only going to be able to carry like, 6 guys instead of 10 guys or something. And they're like, yeah, well, why don't we do that? And then when they built that, then somebody else was like, well, if they see that it's got a cannon on it, they might shoot at it. And then they're like, all right, so let's put missiles on it. That way it can take out a tank. And like, it's a whole to do back and forth. And it's a comedy in a way, but it's true. And it makes this vehicle like really ridiculous. Like the Bradley's is like kind of a ridiculous vehicle because it doesn't really hold enough troops to be a real troop carrier, and it's not thick and armored enough to be like an actual tank. It's just kind of this weird hybrid thing that we built because our expenditure situation with the military and what we do because of what I just described. Where, when we approve things for the military, all these people around the country get employed, creates these kind of abominations. And that's why our military is so big. All right, anyway, I got veered off course with the AI thing. But I just wanted to cover that one, folks. I'm sorry. In the future, we'll talk about something else. But I had to get that one in.
It'd be funny if they'd be like, oh my God, here comes that new American troop transport. Look at all the guns and missiles on it. And then it pulls up and one guy just gets out. It's like, that's all the room we had. Just one dude.
Yeah. It's, but I don't know. I mean, I know it has uses. I mean, I know they use it, I mean, obviously we know a guy that friends with one who was driver or in charge of one.
Right. It just seems that's like the American way. They're like, okay, we'll put a gun on it, and then like you said, it's like, all right, now put some missiles on it. Okay, right. Now put some rockets on it. They're like, okay, we can fit 5 people in there. They're like, we want some lasers. It's like, okay, we're down to 3.
Right. That's exactly it. Yeah. It's so ridiculous, and and in some cases they get maybe things right. Maybe the F-22 turned out to be a good overall purchase so far. That seems like a very capable aircraft. It's just that that's another thing where like we have like a very capable new high-tech dogfighting aircraft, which we don't really need for anything. But of course, hey, what about the future, Kevin? Okay, sure. These things they fly them around for 10 years. They improve them all the time. I get it. But then we also have the Joint Strike Fighter, which is like another fighter that they put together. So we have two. We have two weapons platforms, and I know there's more than that. And it's just like I think that we have so much that we'll just never use because we don't have an enemy that we are told might exist someday in order to fight them. Like, our military is so good just with the training. And the reason why our military fights the way it fights, because the people that are in the military want to be in the military. They're not conscripted to be in. They're not forced to be in. These people want to be in the service, or they've joined the service because they want the money. But either way, they elected to go in, and they do their jobs, and they're trained really well. We spend a lot of money on training and equipment and things like that. And that's not the same around the rest of the world. You know, most of the other world's militaries are, I don't know about our allies. Like, you know, I'm sure the military in Great Britain or France or something is decent, but most of the rest of the world that would tend to be our enemy, like the Russians, like the Chinese, etc., are not disciplined, are not capable, you know, and the days of like the German soldier that we would fight in World War II are over. And the Japanese, you know, they didn't have good tactics in World War II, and we ended up, you know, not losing as many men as you would think we would have lost against how many we killed of theirs. And this would hold true today, but we're so far ahead of everybody. We're so far ahead of everybody else that it's probably a little bit scary if you're in another country, because we could mop up another country's military pretty easily. Now, could we control the country? I think we've proven in Afghanistan, and we've proven when we were in Iraq and stuff, and that we're not good at that, right? We're just good at destroying shit, killing people. We're good
at coming and destroying your stuff and rebuilding it.
Yeah, and giving it to you for free. We're not good at holding on to anything. You know, we can liberate a place if they want to be liberated. I think we've shown that we can do that, but most places that we liberate, we better be sure they want to be liberated, because if they don't, we're wasting our freaking time. But I don't know. I just think the world's a dangerous place and everything. But you know, people always talk about. I'll end on this. People always talk about Taiwan. China's going to invade Taiwan. We're going to go to war with Taiwan, etc. And I've mentioned this before. China doesn't have landing craft to get their people onto the beaches of Taiwan. I mean, you can look this up. They don't have a way to get troops on to the shores of Taiwan. So they're not going to fight that war. Now, they could fight a war of destruction. They could destroy everybody on the island. Maybe, you know, but they would reap a lot of blowback from that. Not to mention a lot of missiles would come flying their way too. But the people, you know, like in terms of like invading and taking over, they just don't have, they're not even building them. They don't have a plan to go in and do that. So when people talk about this, they're uneducated. They don't understand that it's mostly just a paper dragon in the sense of the Chinese. They don't really want to do that fight. They don't want to have that war. And listen, there's like 1 billion people in China. There's only like 20 million people in Taiwan. Like it's probably too many. And economically, China will dominate that area, and it will force Taiwan in time to negotiate with China. Now, the question is, by that time, will China be still a communist government, or will they, like I'm thinking, have some sort of revolution of some sort in order to change their government to something else, and then maybe they become a democracy at some point? Who knows? I might be dead before that happens, but it may be a thing where, you know, they become one country again because the mainland government changes. But ultimately, that war between China and the United States over Taiwan isn't really going to develop, at least not anytime soon, because China's actually not really that interested in it. They just want us to stay out of it, because if they were really looking to invade that island, they would need a way to actually deliver troops to that island, and they don't have that. That's it for the show. So, next week we'll talk about something less serious. I think it bums Donnie and I out. But I'll tell you what, everybody, just really quick, if you got this far in the show and you didn't shut it off, Donnie and I are talking about recording this show on the weekend, probably on Sundays for us. We're going to experiment with that on the next show because both Don and I work on Mondays. This is when we normally record shows. And we're both kind of tired when we do this show. Can you tell?
I'm literally laying down at my bed.
Right. And we're both kind of we're done. And I think the show will be a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more fun if we can get back to recording on Sundays like we did with VGN, etc. So we're going to give it a shot this Sunday, but it's not always necessarily going to be on Sunday. We're going to keep Monday as a backup because we both have obligations and lives. But we're going to give it a shot on this next Sunday, and we're going to see how it goes. So be listening for the future shows, and maybe we'll liven things up a little bit.
Woo-hoo.
Thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next one.
Peace.
You've been listening to Oblast with Don and Kevin. If you'd like to write into the show, send an email to oblast@vgn.us. That is VGN as in video game news. And be sure to check out our Patreon page, which is at patreon.com/VGN, where you can get all of our shows, our videos, and some musings. Be sure to tune in each week for new episodes on our Patreon page or every other week on the public RSS feed that you're subscribed to now. Thanks for listening, and good night.
Peace.